Oh, let's take a look at today's newspapers, shall we? Here to review them for us, the FT's political leader, writer Sebastian Payne, and former Labour advisor to Ed Miliband, Ayesha Hazarika. Good morning to you both.
Hello.
Well, what a momentous day. There's only one story in town when it comes to the front pages, really, isn't it? We're going to start, Ayesha, with the Daily Mail front page. A very striking image of the Prime Minister there. Crush the saboteurs.
Absolutely. Very, very strong image. And even the sort of language in the front of the Daily Mail, I think actually it looks like she's sort of done this to tick every Daily Mail box. It's sort of game-playing Ramonas, unelected lords, saboteurs. You know, it's sort of got all the kind of key enemies of the state. I'm surprised the judges haven't been put and Gina Miller hasn't been.
I think they're on the inside.
Yeah, there probably wasn't any room on the front page.
Exactly. But I mean, it's, you know, everyone was kind of taken by surprise by it yesterday. But this is real red meat to the Daily Mail, to people who want quite a hard Brexit, who sort of think Theresa May has got to push back against people who are going to try and, you know, potentially throw more obstacles in her way. So they will be very pleased.
Yes, Sebastian, it does seem like that, doesn't it? The Prime Minister came out yesterday fighting, saying, I have no choice but to do this because there are certain MPs within her own party and in other parties that want to block her every step of the way.
And it's those groups the Daily Mail it doesn't like as well. It talks about Labour, the SNP, the House of Lords, Ramonas, whatever you want to call them, aside the Tory parties.
Brextremists used the other day.
Not heard that one yet. It's a nice one for the next 7 weeks. The mainstream media is my favourite one, of course. But I think the key thing here is that she's trying to say, I didn't want to do this. And crucially, Theresa May began changing her language at the beginning of this year, because she always said, I don't want to have a general election. There's not going to be a general election. Then she started saying, there shouldn't be a general election. So she's saying, I don't really want it, but these people are making me. And the Daily Mail front page is exactly what she has in mind. And essentially, you can argue that Parliament has not yet caught up with the referendum result, and that's what this election is going to be about.
You've chosen the front page of the Financial Times as well. Theresa May saying she really wants this mandate to strengthen her hand when it comes to Brexit. Is this election going to be fought on Brexit rather than domestic matters, Sebastian?
It is and it isn't. It is going to be all about Brexit. Essentially, it's going to be all the debate about what Brexit looks like, how long it's going to take, what our immigration policy is going to look like. But in a sense, there's no party that's anti-Brexit. Even the Liberal Democrats are pro-staying in the single market. They're not trying to say, let's don't have Brexit.
I think that is a good nuance here in SW1.
But not in the country,
exactly. I think
necessarily.
out in the country, people like the Lib Dems, particularly because they, you know, after results like in Richmond, where they went on a very, very anti-Brexit
Well, second referendum,
Yes,
you know.
Exactly. So I think for the actual public, they will not see anything as nuanced. And I think one of the shames about what's going to happen now is I think everything will be dominated by Brexit. And remember, immigration was the lightning conductor issue during Brexit, and I think it will rear its head again for this snap election. And there's lots of important domestic issues which will not get the attention. The NHS crisis,
It's interesting that the Labour statement yesterday didn't mention Brexit. It focused on domestic matters.
Yeah. And I think, unfortunately, domestic matters will get sort of lost in the maelstrom of the Brexit politics.
I think that's true, but there will also be, because, you know, May has her own agenda, Mayism as opposed to Cameronism, and one of the reasons I think she went for the general election was she looked at not getting her agenda through Parliament, whether it was grammar schools or the other reforms that she's discussed. She had no mandate for them. She's going to try and get that, but ultimately this is trying to free her from the left and the right of her party. Then on both sides there's about 10 MPs who have pretty hardline views on either remaining in the single market or a very quick and clean Brexit. By getting a bigger majority, she can do Brexit as she wants to.
Ayesha, let's have a look at the front page of the Daily Mirror, and they're saying the lady is for you, Tony. 8 times since June last year, Theresa May said no, there will not be a general election. That all changed yesterday.
And, you know, I think people are going to dwell on this because we are living in a time where, you know, look, trust in politics and politicians is at an all-time low. I mean, we always sort of say that. But I think particularly after the Brexit campaign, there was the feeling that, look, could you really trust people for what they said, whether it was the lie on the bus about the NHS and all that kind of thing. Now, the one thing I think Theresa May had in her favour, she was seen as quite a sober person, kind of a, you know, less show pony than David Cameron, but a woman of quite a substance. I think this will have damaged her credibility in a way, because I think this does look like
even though she might argue that the goalposts are changing.
I don't think people are going to buy that. I think what people will think is, as Sebastian just said, she's got about a rump of 20 MPs that are giving her grief from both sides, and she has done this again for party interests rather than national interests.
I do wonder how much voters will mind that, though, because I think the way she put this yesterday is, and I am not wanting this, I have been forced into this. And when you look at the opinion polls about Brexit, most people in the country just want to get on with it. They don't want to rerun the arguments again.
Do you think they'll be more interested in what's in the Conservative manifesto?
Well,
in terms of what pledges remain, and
I hope so. I think it would be good if we had those policy discussions.
But as Ayesha said, most
people
people don't go into the sort of forensic detail. I mean, most politicians don't know half the stuff.
If she starts U-turning on the triple lock pension or not raising taxes,
I think the only poll she cares about is the poll that puts her 20 points ahead of the Labour Party, and I think she doesn't want to make the same mistake that Gordon Brown made back in 2007, where she's got a chance and she's going to be ruthless about it for party political reasons. So I think it is party above country.
Sebastian, front page of The Sun, murdered. The Sun are essentially saying this will be the end of the Labour Party. At best, it's going to be a defeat. At worst, obliteration.
Well, this is Ayesha's point, that the two polls in Theresa May's mind as she was walking across the fields of Wales last week and deciding with her husband, yes, let's call a general election, was number one, a comfortable 20-point lead ahead of the Labour Party, and number two, her personal ratings. Half the country thinks she would make the best Prime Minister, followed by 30-odd% on don't know, and then Jeremy Corbyn on 16-18 points. When don't know's ahead of the next best alternative, you'd be mad not to, and clearly all the polls say, even if they're half wrong, even if we think all the polls are wrong, she's going to get a comfortable majority that will let her do Brexit and her domestic policy agenda, whatever that may be, on her own terms. This is going to be a bad election for Labour, I think. There's no doubt about that.
How bad could it be, Ayesha? I'm going to be speaking to the Shadow Chancellor, John McDonnell, later. Yesterday, he said, bring it on. I mean, I'm going to ask him where his enthusiasm and optimism comes from, given those polls and the approval ratings going into this.
There is deep anxiety within the Labour Party at the moment about how this election is going to pan out for the Labour Party. We are in such a difficult position. Last night I was doing an event and talking to people, and actually the question that came up again and again was, Labour doesn't have a position on Brexit, and that is going to prove very, very difficult for the Labour Party.
Can that change within the next few weeks? Can they carve out a niche for themselves, as the Lib Dems have done?
I think the problem is the Lib Dems have been very, very clear from the offset that they were very against Brexit. They wanted a second referendum. They were pushing back against it. The Labour Party is deeply, deeply divided. Remember, a lot of Labour voters voted for Brexit. And that makes life very, very difficult for the Labour Party. And I think the difficult message for Labour MPs will be saying, especially people who voted against Jeremy Corbyn in the last leadership election, I think they will be putting out a message saying vote for Labour values, try and sort of step away from the leadership. It's not a personality contest.
Just got 30 seconds before we go to the break. I want to squeeze in Inside the Times, Ayesha, page 2. It took us all by surprise, that announcement yesterday. It seems it took most of the cabinet by surprise as well. Theresa May playing her cards very close to her chest on this one.
And Sebastian will know as well, it's very difficult to actually keep secrets in politics. I remember when I worked in Downing Street with Gordon Brown, sometimes there would just be a meeting of two people, Gordon Brown and one other person, and then before you knew it, within 5 minutes, it would be on Twitter, and it wasn't me. But just for clarifying that. But so it's absolutely extraordinary to have kept it, something so big, under wraps. And I think as well, a lot of lobby journalists were very, very surprised by it as well.
Everybody was. There was really 4 people I think knew about this. The Prime Minister, her husband Philip May, Nick Timothy and Fiona Hill, her 2 chiefs of staff. I think outside that inner circle, nobody knew this was coming. And the reason they kept it quiet, look at all the speculation, all the unbounded chatter that happened in the hour before this.
I mean, markets, the pound.
Exactly. So actually they did brilliant. It has to be one of the best kept secrets in British politics of probably all time.
There you go. Okay. Well, you guys aren't tight-lipped this morning. We'll have more from you after the break. Continuing your look at today's papers after this. Ayesha busy telling me during the break that she did a stand-up show last night and had to rewrite the entire contents of the show because of yesterday's announcement. It caught us all on the hop. Sebastian, let's pick up our paper review with Inside the Telegraph, page 5. And this is all about the TV debates. The Prime Minister has said, absolutely not, I am not taking part.
So ever since the 2010 election, this has been part of a general election campaign about will we or won't we have some kind of TV debate. And we infamously had the Gordon Brown, David Cameron, Nick Clegg. I agree with Nick. Cleggmania happened in 2010, which feels like a lifetime ago now. And the last general election in 2015, we had on-off debates where Cameron went on, took some questions, then Ed Miliband came on, but they never actually had a proper head-to-head debate. Then during the EU referendum, again, there wasn't a head-to-head debate between David Cameron or Jeremy Corbyn or whatever. Because this campaign is going to be so short, Downing Street have said Prime Minister will not be taking part in any TV debates. Now, I can understand why that is. You know, she's 36 points ahead of Jeremy Corbyn. Why give him a platform as an equal when she clearly rises above that in leadership stains? But it's not good for voters, and it's not good for the country, really, to have that opportunity. Now, I'd personally prefer tough TV interviewers with going head-to-head with each of the candidates, but I think we should have the debate as well. But ultimately, it's sort of in the Prime Minister's power, and the question is, over the next few days, is there enough momentum from the other party leaders and from the broadcasters, you know, BBC, Sky, ITV and Channel 4, to say, we're going to have debates without you, do you want to be empty chairs?
I mean, Ayesha, that's an interesting point because, you know, the Prime Minister's come out and in her statement yesterday accused people of political game playing. What's she doing here by refusing to take part in a TV debate?
Well, absolutely, but, you know, to the victor the spoils, and she's in a very strong position at the moment with her poll lead and the fact that she looks like she's set to have a reasonably good victory. And I remember when we were in opposition, particularly when I worked for Ed, we hounded David Cameron to get a one-to-one debate, or even just the three main leaders. And we actually even got the broadcasters behind us because they wanted to do it as well. And Number 10 did not yield. Cameron's team were very much like, you cannot have these debates without us. We are sticking firm. We'll move a little bit. And I think that's what she'll do because she's super cautious about this stuff. So I think, sadly, it will be a bit of a... But what the tactic will be, you will see over the next 48 hours, all the parties will gang up against Theresa May with the broadcasters and say, give us a debate, and she'll say no.
We haven't empty-chaired anyone yet. We've just got time to squeeze this in. This was my favourite reaction yesterday, Sebastian,
Brenda,
to the news of the next general election.
I know, we are all Brenda at this morning that the BBC Vox popped someone yesterday on the streets of Bristol to ask her what she felt about the election, and Brenda said, not again, not more politics for you to have this. And I feel that was the general reaction of the country, because it said the last 3 years, the general election, the EU referendum, and now another general election, and we've got the mayoral elections, the local elections.
I saw a brilliant joke on Twitter yesterday that said, you might not know it, but some polling stations are often used as schools as well. That's what it's like at the moment. Sebastian, Ayesha, you're going to come back in the next hour for more stories from inside today's papers. Thank you very much for the moment. Busy day ahead. The sun's coming up here in Westminster. It looks like it's going to be quite a nice day. Isabel has got the details for everyone else as well.